Hi, Stuart.
Hey, Jill. How's it going?
I'm good. I'm excited about this conversation. There was an event that happened about the chemical leak accident in Bhopal, India, like 40 years ago. So tell me about the event that you went and recorded and we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so this was actually a year ago in September 2024. I went to this event that was hosted by the Beaver County Marcellus Awareness Community for the 40th anniversary of the Bhopal chemical disaster. So I've wanted to do this episode ever since then, but we just never got to it because life kept getting in the way. But I finally got around to cutting some clips out of the footage I took from that event. And I want to show you and get your kind of initial reaction to the clips. You haven't seen any of this footage. When I cut these clips, it was the first time I'd seen the footage in a year. And it's pretty remarkable and disturbing. And, it's just something that I think people need to remember. Because I think, it happened in 1984, December 2nd, 1984. And so I feel like if you were an adult at that time, you probably have heard of this event at least. But in my age group or lower, I think a lot of people don't know about this. And I think it's important to keep this fresh in people's minds, that this is sort of this is what can happen with chemical companies. This is what is sort of like the worst example of a petrochemical facility accident. And I think it's important that we all sort of continue to realize that this is the potential. And
why we shouldn't locate them. They should not be permitted so close to communities.
Mm-hmm. And what caused this issue was a lot to do with cutting corners and cost savings and just sort of like white collar decision making at the executive level at the expense of the communities and the people that, are most at risk for the consequences of that behavior.
So once again, profit over people and their safety and well-being.
Mm-hmm. We're going to hear from three women. Mostly we're going to hear from one woman because the other two didn't speak English. So they would speak and then she would translate for them. But all three of them were children at the time. They're all survivors of the Bhopal incident. And they have been very active ever since in trying to fight for justice and to get compensation to the community, because the health impacts have, as you'll hear, have been really dramatic and very long lasting. And they've never really truly gotten any kind of restitution.
Well, show me what you're talking about there. My goodness.
I was 5 months old at the time of the disaster, on the night of the disaster. That night has consequence that has affected me and my family for the last 40 years. That night, we say, it should not happen to anyone. My family, which was 7 of us who lived about 1.5 kilometers away from the Union Carbide factory, which was a pesticide plant that blew up. As soon as there was a lot of chaos in the night, everyone was saying, run, run. It was a cold night. My father opened the gate to see what was happening. As soon as he opened the gate, the gas entered into our house. And all of us started running. My mother took me and my father took my other siblings and they started running. Somehow they got separated. My mother had me in her arms on that night. And she tells me her eyes felt like someone had put acid in them. Her lungs were choking. She was seeing people around her dying, people in their own body fluids dying as she was running, women aborting on that night, right in front of her. So she found a space where she could not run any longer, and she sat there. She wanted some water, but there was no water to be found.
My first thought is, they should have stayed inside? I mean, was there any, what's the emergency response plan or what emergency plan? Was there one? How would you? That would be my response. Like, oh, there's an explosion at the run.
So they do talk about that a little later. They talk about the fact that Union Carbide never communicated the risk or what should be done if anything like this happened to the community. And later they learned that many lives could have been saved if they had just gone under wet blankets. But it was, it was panic, and everyone was running because this gas was, and to be clear, it wasn't an explosion, and this gas just kind of leaked into the community.
Well, how did they even know there was a leak then?
The stinging eyes and like the general panic. I guess they probably heard the panic of the people who were being hit first with it, and it just kind of created like a stampede sort of situation. Is kind of what it sounded like to me. So there was supposed to be a PA system in the facility, but in order to cut costs, they had let that fall apart. So there was no emergency PA. They had not properly warned the people in the community of the danger of this gas, and the gas was MIC gas, methyl isocyanate, and the dangers of the gas was never really communicated to the community, and the safeguards in the facility were undermined because of cost cutting.
A night that killed 8,000 to 10,000 people in the immediate aftermath and maimed more than 500,000 for the rest of their lives. This was not a disaster, this was a disaster in making. Our lives are affected badly. My mother suffers from pulmonary fibrosis. She is on an inhaler. The only treatment for lung fibrosis is a lung transplant. My sister, who was 2 years old on the night, she suffers from chronic renal failure, as many gas victims do. Because Union Carbide, even though it knew in 1970 that exposure to methyl isocyanate will cause permanent injuries, they never told this to anyone. They were so cruel that their PA system, the announcement system, was not working on the night. Even if people would have been told not to run on that night, to cover yourself in wet blankets and stay at home, so many would have been saved. The faster people ran, the faster they died in their own body fluids, the faster women aborted on that night. Union Carbide, to this day, has not revealed the toxicology of gases that leaked on that night, calling it a trade secret. They denied us the very antidote that could have helped us and not made our injuries permanent. There was a German scientist who came to Bhopal right after the disaster, brought ampules of sodium thiosulfate, saying that if people who had been exposed to MIC were given this, they would feel better. A lot of people and a lot of government agencies started administering sodium thiosulfate. And once people were administered sodium thiosulfate, they were feeling better because they were secreting thiocyanate out of your urine. But from the day one, Union Carbide continued to say that there would be no permanent damage. The only damage one would have suffered was their eyes. And this sodium thiosulfate was proving that the damage was to every part of the body, not just to the eyes. So they denied us that, and sodium thiosulfate was not given. The reason there are so many people suffering from kidney failures because Union Carbide does not reveal toxicology of gases. So the treatment that is being given to people in Bhopal is mostly symptomatic treatment. So people have taken antibiotics, psychotropic drugs, painkillers, inhalers in kilograms, and all of that has a very negative impact on kidneys.
8,000. How many people that died right away?
So
or what?
3,000, roughly 3,000 people died within hours, and 15 and 25,000 were dead within the next few weeks or months. And then over the last 40 years, 100 to 250,000 people have suffered long-term health consequences from being exposed. 500,000 people total were exposed to the chemical. Because this happened in a pretty densely populated city. But what we see in that clip, what sounds familiar, is the trade secret.
Yes.
And we hear that a lot today in fracking, waste, and the produced water, as well as the petrochemical industry.
It's just terrifying.
Yeah, this was the largest chemical disaster in history, as far as the death toll and the impact and everything. And in one of these clips, I can't remember which one, but she says that it was basically the result of Union Carbide trying to save about $45 a day.
And would they get away with that today? Yes. I mean, could these same things be happening and people cutting corners or companies? We know that happens still. But I'm just trying to figure out. It's very shocking. And I mean, I've heard details about it, but to hear it coming from those victims, and I'm shocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And to hear them describe the scene of running from the gas and just, you can imagine the chaos. A lot of, I guess the gas caused a lot of like on-site losses of pregnancy. And you also have to imagine too, that this was the result of the Indian government basically trying to adopt our agricultural practices. So they were trying to, it was called the Green Movement in India. They were trying to bring agrochemicals and industrial agriculture to their farming.
Bummer.
So we kind of exported the agrochemical industry to them. And so you kind of have to imagine that at this time, there wasn't a lot of knowledge about like what this was there. They didn't know what these chemicals were really. So today you would at least like we have this example to say like, yes, this MIC gas does this. But back then, at least the general public didn't have that awareness that this was that dangerous. But it seems like the company knew.
There's still thousands of tons of toxic waste that has left behind in the Union Carbide factory, which has contaminated the groundwater of about 200,000 people. This water is laced with several persistent organic pollutants, and there are several number of children that are being born with birth defects.
Yeah. So what she's talking about there is the ongoing contamination that is still present for 200,000 people in their drinking water. And the effects of this chemical exposure, if it didn't kill you then, it's being seen in like generations of births.
Mm. Talk about a legacy of pollution and contamination and suffering in people's health. My goodness. Yeah. And you would think an incident like that would be enough to wake up the world, really. I mean, sure, that news spread around to like, okay, we really do need to locate these facilities if we're going to continue with this. And areas that aren't populated, there's enough open land away from communities, isn't there, still on this planet to operate these types of facilities? I mean, that's what's just so...
And just installing, if we are going to accept that we're going to do this, you would at least expect that you would go above and beyond in terms of safeguards, rather than constantly trying to cut corners and save cost. But the thing about this is that was wild to me is I think, I had heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it. And I had barely heard about it. And then I went to this and listened to these stories. And I was just like, how could I have not heard of this? Like, how is this not something that's just so, like 9/11, like that level of consciousness, like everybody knows what 9/11 was. Why doesn't everybody know what this is?
these corporations thought it would be good to make pesticides and push them in the Indian market. And that's exactly what they were doing. This pesticide plant was started in 1969. They were bringing this untested and unproven technology into Bhopal, where they were using methyl isocyanate, a chemical known to make a pesticide called 7. They had a sister facility not very far from here. It's a place called Institute, West Virginia. That facility and the Union Carbide facility, there were massive design differences. There was cost cutting in the Bhopal facility. They shut down the refrigeration system in order to save $40 a day. The size of the tanks in the Bhopal facility were much bigger than what the facility in West Virginia. And these were all decisions taken by people in the boardroom who considered all of this was considered business as usual. Cutting cost at the cost of our health and our people's health and our children's health and our environment was considered business as usual and is considered business as usual. So on the night of the disaster when this happened, the PA system was not working. This was not something that happened overnight. It took many years. There were warning signs. In fact, there was a journalist in Bhopal who predicted the disaster 8 months before, right? And it happened. 8 to 10,000 people died within 3 days. There were so many deaths that they had to be buried and mass cremated in the ground, and they had to be thrown into the river, because there were so many people who were dying. And it was no less than a genocide. But when people were dying outside the hospital, and when the doctors asked Union Carbide officials, what should we give them? What should we give people to make them feel better because they're dying like flies? Union Carbide's only response was, it's tear gas. It will just go away with water. When women were aborting on the streets, when we knew that the gas had crossed the placental barrier and the pulmonary barrier, that's what the corporation was saying. In fact, they wanted to make that gas that was still remaining in that plant, because they wanted to earn money from that. They made sure that the entire city was emptied out. Just like in East Palestine, they wanted to burn up those containers so that the rail could start functioning again and faster. And then this is what they did, because profit maximization at any cost was important to them. And the onus of proving whether it is the gas or it is the chemical of that corporation that has disabled me, that has caused the injury, that has caused her mother's pulmonary fibrosis or kidney failure, that onus is on us. That onus is on you. Because chemicals are proven innocent until proven guilty. And judiciary, in most cases, will rob you of your dignity. That's what we have seen in Bhopal. For lifelong injuries, people got $500. It took anywhere from 8 years to 20 years to get that money. And I'm hearing the same stories here, that it's the 10-mile radius, it's the 20-mile radius. Why should that onus be on us? That onus should be on the corporation that decides to produce such toxic chemicals. It should be on that corporation that decides to put all safety features on one side and make these derailments happen. Anyways, and most importantly, the corporations responsible and the individuals responsible have not gone to jail even for a minute. For killing 25,000 people over the years, that's how many people have died. For disabling their next generation, not a single individual. And unconnected to this Bhopal disaster, but because the same thought is there, there is an ongoing environmental disaster, what Bati just talked about. Because they wanted to cut cost, they designed these substandard hazardous waste management systems where they dug pits right outside the factory. All the toxic waste was dumped in there. And then when the toxic line breached back in 1982, the toxic waste started seeping into the groundwater, and now we are in a condition where 200,000 people are living in an area that has heavy groundwater contamination with persistent organic pollutants, and mother's breast milk has mercury. But in all of this, when it seems so invincible, because trust us when we say it is very invincible these corporations seem, because these are the poorest people fighting the richest corporations of the world. Yeah? It is only the ordinary power of people like you and me that have brought them down. It is, and this thing is a testament to this. This dialogue today is a testament to that collectively we can fight, we can win, and there have been victories. There have been victories, and this is not just about Bhopal, because the precedent cannot be that corporations can come, kill, pollute, maim, disable, pay $500, tell you to prove your liability, rob you of your dignity, and change your name and get away with murder. And that is why people in Bhopal fight, and that is why people all around this world should unite.
Oh, that was great.
She's powerful.
I mean, I'm just saying that's why people from all around the world should unite. I mean, it's true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She, all three of them were very powerful. I mean, but she in particular is like I was very impressed with her. As we go through these clips, though, it sounds more and more familiar.
Yes.
You know, the onus is on you to prove the harm rather than the company to prove the safety. The fact that they can change their name to get out of liability.
Yes.
Or another company come and buy. So in the case of this situation, Union Carbide was bought by Dow Chemical in 2001. And the people of Bhopal went to Dow Chemical and took up their issue with them. And they were told by Dow Chemical, we bought the assets, not the liabilities. It's worth mentioning, and they didn't really talk about this too much, but the CEO of Union Carbide at the time was a guy named Warren Anderson. He fled India as soon as this happened. And he went back a short time later and was arrested. And there was some shady things that happened where he was able to post bail, get out, and he fled the country again and never went back. He is to this day, he passed away, but to this day, he's a fugitive of India. Interpol actually had a warrant out for his arrest, and the U.S. refused to extradite him to India. Mm-hmm. And he died at 92 years old in a very comfortable, wealthy suburb in New York, lived out the rest of his lives. And he was quoted as saying that the people of Bhopal were being hypochondriacs.
Is that real?
Yeah. He never apologized. He never showed remorse. He thought that people calling for his arrest or for him to be held accountable were overreacting. And he just downplayed the whole thing and lived out the rest of his life in a mansion somewhere. And
within 3 days, 8,000 to 10,000 people died. Mm-hmm. And he can just live the rest of his life in a mansion somewhere completely unaffected. Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of people that do not belong in my reality. Why,
Yeah. Yeah. And those are the kind of people that, it's not that every person that runs a big company is like that. But those people are running some big companies in this world today, and they have an immense amount of power and influence and money. And it's disturbing to me that regardless of how many times this plays out, not exactly the same scenario, but the harming a community and the scapegoating and the getting away of liability, the shifting of blame, the onus on the harmed. Like, no matter how many times this plays out, we as a society just continue to defend it based on this idea of jobs and economics. And at some point, it seems like we would be asking ourselves, like, do we really want guys like Warren Anderson, like, running the show of our society?
No.
It's not, I don't think it's good. And I don't know how anyone could look at this situation and defend it in any way. And yet we do implicitly, by continuing to support these companies and going to bat for these industries, continuing to create legislation and policy that shields companies like this from liability. We're basically looking at this incident in Bhopal and saying, those people don't matter. What matters more than the 10,000 people dead is our bottom line for this quarter. And that there just seems to be something deeply wrong with that.
But, it's nothing new. I always come back to the original inhabitants of North America, the Africans. Like, how could those communities been mistreated anymore? Genocide, annihilated, enslaved, all for the benefit of a certain group of people who are now even in more power, but they're doing the same thing. And we can see it every day where it's happening right now. Here in the shale fields in Louisiana, on and on, where corporations are continuing to put profit over the health and safety of the people in their communities and their children. And there's always that argument, well, we're reliant upon these products that they produce, or the oil and the gas, or, the plastic. But where are the individuals in positions of power and with the money to provide the alternatives, or to, and then it's just the divide between the rich and the poor is growing. It's not, the rich still aren't sharing. They're still hoarding. And, one of my favorite principles, morals, codes of living with indigenous communities and historically is this principle of you give in order to receive. Like, those who were most respected in the tribe were the ones who gave the most away, who helped the most people. And if you hoarded things or had more than you needed, you were thought of as insane and could be cast out of the community. Can you imagine if that's that's what we need? Mm-hmm. And it worked. People, it's just so contrary. How it's about, I need a better car, I need more cars, I need a better house, I need to have this much money in the bank. And people don't, in general, where is the sharing spirit? Where is the knowledge and how many people actually understand that you must give in order to receive, that you can't hold or it blocks off energy? And so I've seen people with too much, they end up going crazy. Whether they know it or not, the anxiety they're feeling, the stress they have is because we're meant to share and to live in community and to help one another. Love and compassion is the path that brings harmony and helps foster harmonious living with individuals, with nature. Never took more than they needed. They didn't just go keep hunting, and certainly no trophy hunting. Like, they wouldn't just go shoot a deer because, I got a good shot. They used every single part of any animal they ever took down, or, it's just, anyway.
No, that touches on a lot of stuff. There's this idea that capitalism, as we have it, is healthy because it fosters competition and innovation and growth and all of these things. And I'm not inherently, against those ideas, but there's this false choice that gets promoted, which is that we can't solve these problems without undermining someone's ability to innovate and to compete. But I think we have to be clear, like, that is a false choice. Like, these things are happening to make people like Warren Anderson richer. They are not happening to create jobs or to facilitate better economics for society. They are happening to make the CEOs and the executive class richer. And if you install better safety features, if you make sure trains aren't derailing, if you make sure plants aren't melting down or leaking gases, if you make sure natural gas is being done with worker safety in mind, it's a false choice that we can't do that and also have jobs.
Right.
The only thing that those things hurt is the investment portfolio of the executive and the ownership class. And we're being fed this lie that we can't make workers' safety a priority because then we won't have jobs. It's like, no, you're still going to have oil and gas. It's just that your workers will be better taken care of and your CEO won't be able to take home that extra $1 million a year.
If it would even cost that much.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's like, I believe that we can have the spirit of capitalism coexist with the spirit of sharing and service. They aren't mutually exclusive things. It's just that when we totally eliminate the spirit of service and sharing and community, and we only focus on maximizing profit, we run into things like this. Like when Bhopal happened, you would think that the world would say, okay, something's off the rails. Like we can still have successful companies, we can still progress, we can still advance, but like not like this.
Mm-mm.
And it seems like instead of that, we just swept it under the rug and doubled down. And that's what we seem to do every time.
So we had a system where and this is also very common, that the agencies who are entrusted to monitor your health and to do long-term research will not do that for you. Will not do that for you. They will try and the corporations will use, and maybe the governments will also use all their clout to downplay damages. That will happen. That happened in Bhopal. And because this was the thing, people organized themselves in different groups and they decided to fight. So one of the fights that we fought successfully, took us a very long time. We fought that all people exposed to gas, their right to free and adequate healthcare be recognized as a constitutional right, equal right to life. And we got that. We won that in 2012. It took us a very long time after proving what our research agencies should have proved, what our pollution control boards should have been able to tell us. But please know, this is a lesson from Bhopal, that those agencies who have been put out to protect your health and environment, they will not be doing so for you. That's a deep, hard lesson we have learned. We have also learned that we have to make them accountable. So it was very important for us that research continued. So at the time when there was a settlement happening between Union Carbide and Union of India, Government of India, there were no medical records put forth. There were no medical records put. But even though we had research agencies that was collecting data, they had data to show, yes, there is going to be long-term damage. They never put those things on record. So we made sure and we fought that government started research in 1985, and in 1992 they shut down all research without publishing a single paper. The first time any research finding came out was 20 years after the disaster in 2004. And we used those research findings to put pressure on the government that research should be restarted, not only on people who were directly exposed, but also on their children who were born after.
And we've been talking about doing an episode on, regulatory capture, corporate capture, and exactly what she said, that the agencies that are supposed to be there to protect public health, they don't. They protect and serve the industry. And that's exactly what's happened here, especially in Ohio and, on the federal level too. But, but they were persistent and they kind of did, you've got to be your own regulators. You've got to be your own scientists. You've got to be your own advocate. And so that's amazing, although how many years? 2012 before they got healthcare for life, but they did get it, you know. So that's amazing and encouraging, but it's just, why does it have to be this way? You know, why is there so much corruption?
Yeah. Well, the red flag that goes off in my head when she talks about that is the only way that they were able to have that success was through their persistence and their diligence and their own research. And in this country right now, as we speak, there are laws being pushed through state legislatures that restrict our ability to do that kind of research, to have air monitoring and to use that data to hold industry accountable. And so I think what is really, really important for people to realize, and I honestly think this is probably, if you take nothing else away from this, we as citizens have to maintain our right to collect data, do research, and have science be free from restriction from the government and the industries. Mm-hmm. Because if the government and the industries are allowed to restrict research, you'll never be able to get this kind of outcome.
Right. So important.
So I think there's there's two discussions. One is, how do we prevent things like Bhopal from happening? But the other discussion is, when harms do occur, how do we make sure that we can hold companies liable and make sure that the injured parties get what they're due? And that can't happen if we are not allowed to do community science and do research and collect data. And it's disturbing to me right now that there's this active push to make it so that we can't do those things.
And I would say that certainly the people in East Palestine weren't compensated justly. There was some kind of settlement, but it wasn't going to be enough. Ended up being maybe $500. It was based on where you lived or proximity. I don't know, but yeah. I know the community was not happy about that.
I don't think I could be wrong about this, but I don't think anyone's gotten paid anything yet. Yeah, there was a big settlement, and there is supposed to be a big chunk of money that was set aside to distribute to impacted citizens, and I don't think it's been distributed yet. And I don't know how much it is.
And I do think it was something based on how close you live to.
Yeah.
I would call it accident. It was an accident, but then it was the controlled burn and intentional burning off of these toxic chemicals. So that's where that's not an accident. That was a corporate decision outside the regulators, Yeah,
and just like Bhopal, there was cost cutting involved leading up to that.
Yep. And staff had been cut, maintenance staff by Norfolk Southern, I just heard, a month before or something.
Yeah, and I forget off the top of my head what it was called, but it was a system that expedited their inspection process so that they could have trains running more. It's going to bug me that I can't think of what that is. But the East Palestine thing was a huge wake-up call and red flag that I feel like everyone just kind of ignored. I hate to say it this way because obviously the people of East Palestine, it really impacted their life. But what if that had happened in Pittsburgh?
And it could, any moment of any day.
It was just as likely to happen in Pittsburgh as it just happened to be in East Palestine. But if that had happened in Pittsburgh, it would have impacted 1 million people. And like I said, I don't want to frame it that way because I'm not trying to discount the value of the people in East Palestine, but it's just in terms of in terms of population density, and I just don't think that anyone really, it doesn't seem to me like that really like sunk in for people.
No, and it was in the news for a while, and everybody was talking about it. I mean, we had people calling from Colorado, and like they were concerned about us 2 hours away. You should get out of there. I mean, so it was widespread, and people knew, and people were concerned, and couldn't believe it, shocked. But that's why we keep kind of bringing it up, because it shouldn't be forgotten, and people are still suffering, and they're having lasting health impacts. Can they prove that? That's the problem. Once again, is Norfolk Southern going to ever admit that? Is the EPA ever going to admit that? They're not admitting that, right? I mean, did they say anything about that in that meeting you had recently?
No, I mean, I've been to 3 different events regarding East Palestine, and at every event, people have mentioned health impacts that they've experienced, and at no point have I ever seen any officials kind of like affirm those experiences that people are having. And it's just, I don't know, it's like there's just such a disconnect. It's like you have this, it's like they acknowledge that these chemicals are very dangerous. And then they have an event where these chemicals are incinerated in the middle of a town. And then people complain about health impacts, but the response is, well, it's not really connected.
And our testing shows that there's no pollutants in the air. And it's not from the derailment.
And it's just kind of like, how can you, like, it's just common sense. It's obvious, but there just seems to be these like layers of barriers to, and I guess it's because we live in a country that's run by lawyers, maybe, where, it's just everything is kind of created in a way where it seems almost impossible to connect from a legal standpoint the harm with the obvious contributor, even though we all kind of know.
The pattern of deflecting responsibility is not unique to Union Carbide and now its owner Dow Chemical. They all use that. They have learned. It's the same book they follow. Yeah, we just have to get ahead with them. Yeah, and they persist across many countries, many continents. What we have also learned that in cases of corporate crime, it is likely that the local and national governments will look away, succumb to political clout, and downplay damages, collaborate and provide impunity or escape routes from liability of polluting companies.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of funny because like we are having the conversation based on one clip, and then what we say kind of is what they say in the next clip.
Exactly, because it's all too familiar, right?
Yeah.
It's the same story, different companies, related industries, it all comes back to oil and gas.
Yeah. And
this petrochemicals.
And this is what I wish more people understood. Because like there's people in East Palestine who are sick of hearing about it, right? They just want to move on with their life. There's people who think that the people like us and the folks in East Palestine are overreacting, just like Warren Anderson said that the people in Bhopal were overreacting. But here's the thing. When you take a step back and you look at all of these different events and train derailments and chemical disasters, these companies follow the same playbook.
Yes, they do.
It is always the same. It's like cookie cutter. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you start to realize that East Palestine wasn't some isolated incident, and the aftermath wasn't some unique process where they were just kind of trying to figure it out as they went the best they could. It followed a playbook that seems to be in play every time one of these things happens. And it all has to do with the seemingly coordinated effort between government agencies and industry to downplay the harms, to shift blame, to do anything that they can to kind of minimize the liability that exists. And the people who suffer, the people who lose, are always the people who are actually harmed by what happened.
And in order for any retribution, compensation, there's usually a core group, a select few who stand up and fight for years and years, maybe decades, and they never give up. And fortunately, and what's inspiring is just like took until 2012 for them to get health care for life, but they got it. And that's because they were persistent and they didn't give up and they fought for justice for their loved ones in their community. And, you know, they're traveling around to educate and help spread awareness so that it can empower other communities to stand up, for their rights to a healthy life, for justice, for the people.
Yeah. And it's very eye-opening to hear them talk about the way that this played out and just hearing how repetitive it all is when you look at like other situations. But it is also very empowering and, inspiring to see that they just kept fighting and eventually they had these wins. And they're still fighting. They still are trying to get more justice because they've not gotten enough. But they have gotten wins, and that keeps them going. And it should be a kind of a light on the hill for everybody.
This is one of the sacrifice zones, yeah. So was Bhopal, yeah, and this again, the one-day exposure can have consequences for so many years. And when you have a bunch of corporations doing all kinds of stuff, it is so hard to prove, and it is also so hard to know for yourself which one is whose chemical am I being poisoned by,
right?
Being poisoned by, yeah.
We've talked about that.
And what we have realized that there is no international fora to try companies who do this because they have corporate wills. I mean, can you imagine? Union Carbide said, "Oh, it's the Indians who did it. The Union Carbide India Limited. Union Carbide India Limited. Oh, it was the Americans who provided us the design, and they were the majority stakeholders." And now comes in Dow, and they say, "Well, we just took the assets and not the liabilities because it's called the reverse triangular merger." Whoever thinks of this stuff, yeah? But this is what they're going to push you. They are going to bring their best lawyers. They're going to bring their best public health people who they pay well. And what they're going to bring is a big PR agency where they will spin that lie so many times and it will become the truth. Most people will believe it's the truth.
Amen, sister. I mean, what are we going to do about it? I mean, this is what we're doing about it, spreading awareness. That's where I continue to recognize, like, we have to spread awareness. And it'd be nice if we were talking about the beautiful spirituality and the Ayurvedic medicine part that comes from India. There's all kinds of things about India I'd love to be talking about, and their ancient knowledges and traditions, and so much we could learn, from their past and present and customs. But this is what my life experience has led me to, is to highlight the work of, and the sufferings, but also the triumphs of women like this, and to just expose once again, the corporate capture, the regulatory capture, and the fact that the masses should be in control. Like, the people do have the power, but the people have to be awakened to the truth. And then the people have the power. Power to the people. Like, at what point is that tiny little percentage of, I can't say it, I'm not, but, men mostly, a small amount of effing crazy ass, insane, greedy, ego. What are they? I mean, they're just they're I don't like them. That's all I'm saying. I want them to go away. I wish they would just, or actually, I don't want them to go away. I believe that hearts and minds can be transformed. Can we just shoot them with a bolt of universal love and transform them, and suddenly, like, I can't wait to help everybody and share my wealth, and let's find a new way to create our energy that's going to leave a wonderful, healthy, happy planet for my children. That could happen. That's what I want. I don't want to get rid of anybody. I want everybody to awaken to the truth and the joy that is love and compassion. That could happen. It could. Now agree, Stuart, whether you think it can or not.
It could. Anything's possible. Yeah, I don't know what it is that drives men like this. And it, like you said, it's not new. I mean, the indigenous people in North America, but also even back further than that, like the East India companies, like the Dutch and British East Indian companies were brutal. And they just treated people from other lands worse than cattle. It was just, and for spices. For cinnamon, they murdered people for cinnamon, and that's kind of what our modern economic system is built on.
We don't see this as an industrial disaster or a chemical industry disaster. We see this as a corporate crime. That's what it is. And unless we call it that, we will never be able to address it. And they are the most ubiquitous, have the gravest of the consequences, yet they are least reported, least litigated, and net zero convictions, because India has very lax environmental laws, right, in terms of when the contamination was happening. But come on, it's not different in Cancer Alley or even here. I mean, it's the agencies who are supposed to, have authority of what is acceptable or not. It is somehow acceptable to emit carcinogenic chemicals. How can there be a level for that? This to me, this is mind-boggling. So government is definitely involved in this. We are holding them accountable. We're putting pressure on them. I mean, that's why seeking appropriate healthcare was something from them. Seeking for the next generation is from them. Clean drinking water. We had to walk for 37 days twice from Bhopal to Delhi to get beaten up and all that to get clean drinking water. But that's what we got from the government. So it's not that the fight against the government is any easy, but at least you get something after fighting. But it's from the corporate, it's very hard.
So, I mean, I almost want to talk about the corporate capture because she's brought it up so much. I guess without going there, my big takeaway from this whole thing is that we need to be more global in our mentality of harm and liability. And we should all be holding our companies accountable for what they do in other countries. It's not right that we can be so pro us and so pro life here, but think it's acceptable for our own companies that are, creating our economy and our stock market and everything to be acting this way in other countries, to be just totally disregarding human life elsewhere.
True. And they do it here too, but it's even worse and they can get away with it more. So once again, that's where the governments have to be held accountable, and somehow the people have to demand that their governments put the health and safety of the people above the corporations, but that's when you get into the lobbyists and who's paying, who helps get these. So it's just, it's the same everywhere,
Yeah, I'm. The more that I learn about the way that all of this functions, the more I think the line between private industry and government is blurred.
Yeah.
And it's like our government is functioning almost as just an arm of the corporate sector. And I think we all kind of know that. But because of political propaganda in these ideological lines, we can't seem to come together on it to do anything about it. And I don't know how to solve that problem, but that's kind of what I see.
Yeah, it's really powerful to hear this because it does help. I mean, I feel like when it first came to my backyard, it was just like, oh my gosh, it's about me, my community, my family. But then when you learn more and you experience more, then it's like, wow, but what's going on in Louisiana? What's happened in Texas? What's happened in Colorado? What's happened, in Pennsylvania? And it's, so then the movement in general, the coalition has tried to collaborate and highlight and support each other. But now I'm like, okay. And Break Free from Plastic, I'll definitely give them respect and support because they have kind of established a global network of people all over the world who come together. And so that's really encouraging. And so that's where I first got the sense of this global movement was through their incredible work. But just hearing their story makes me realize somehow, some way, I'd like to connect even more across the globe with people.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the arguments I hear a lot from folks that I talk to about these issues who are pro-industry is, well, at least we do it better than other countries do it. At least we're cleaner here than other countries. I heard that. I was had a private meeting with a state rep in Pennsylvania about the Shell cracker plant. And that's what he said. He said, at least we do it cleaner here. What that argument fails to take into account is that this was a U.S. company.
Exactly.
We are doing this dirtier in other countries.
And it's dirty enough here with our practices. But then yeah, exactly.
It's not this separation that people think it is. Like we are taking advantage of companies that don't have the regulations that we are actively trying to dismantle here. Like we have the regulations that keep us cleaner and we're trying to tear those down while at the same time we're saying, well, they do it dirtier over there, so it's better that we do it here. We should be trying to make their regulations as strong as ours. We should be trying to make our regulations stronger because they don't hurt jobs, they hurt profits.
For a select handful of people who don't even need the freaking money, who are rich enough already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Bhopal incident, the story that these women shared was both inspiring but also infuriating. It makes me mad that our country exports this kind of damage across the world and then we don't hold our CEOs accountable. That this Warren Anderson was able to just live a quiet life of luxury after making decisions that contributed to the murder of 15 to 25,000 people.
Now go back to that wonderful thought that hearts and minds can be transformed. Anything is possible. All we can count on is change. So I just want to say there is an amazing elder, wisdom keeper, author, Eckhart Tolle. And I was given this book by dear friend Mary. It's called Oneness with All Life. And so here's just a little quote from Eckhart. You don't become good by trying to be good, but by finding the goodness that is already within you and allowing that goodness to emerge. So I believe that all these CEOs, these corporate monsters, for lack of a better word, or, greedy, all these individuals who are making decisions that are causing such great harm, there is goodness within them. If somehow, some way, it can just emerge. It's possible, Stuart. Anything's possible, Stuart.
Sure.
And I've got John Mayer running through my head. I was cruising the other day. Country road, need a break from work, and just keep me where the light is. And it kind of sounds like a quiet church little song, part of this chorus. Just keep me where the light is. Come on, keep me where the light is. And so I'm just saying, let's not just keep me where the light is. Let's get everybody where the light is and keep them there.
Amen.
Amen. Aho. Guidance and protection.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.